will be working overtime hours just to get by, because they can't possibly get by on the wage that they're paid without working incredible amounts of overtime. And when you're working up to 15 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week, you know, your 2-year-old child just doesn't see you. You know, they don't get to see their children.
The kids can't even go to school. How are you going to break a cycle of poverty and have real economic development if you have a whole lost generation of children that aren't even educated? I'm walking down this dirt path into this village, and I see this massive pile of scrap shoe rubber that I later learned came from one of Nike's factories, and piles like that get dumped there all the time, and the end result of these piles is that they get burned in that village in the big open space where kids play. And the burning fumes, I learned from the company that designs Nike shoe rubber, will give off toxins and carcinogens. Kids are paying the price. And they're the ones with the chest infections, and they're the ones that are going to develop cancer.
Many companies look to expand their profit as much as possible. The cheapest way to do so is use outsourcing. The reasons that a company would use outsourcing may vary depending on country, supplies, and cost. Mainly, a country uses outsourcing for the cost reduction. Outsourcing is much cheaper than the cost of hiring within the country. Products being made can be rushed quicker to the buyer market. Also, the quality of the product is improved better than it would be in-house.
This week only, it's the America for Sale celebration.
Sale happening every other week, too.
Come on down to Outsourcing Eddie's Democracy Liquidation Lot. Our liquidation lot is now bigger than ever, stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific. If you're a global corporation with good cash or credit, our line of America is for you. We're a dealing. We got prisons. Check out this prison just purchased by Geo Group Incorporated. After a for-profit prison privatization upgrade, you get more violence, more costs, more repeat customers, and a contract that guarantees 90% occupancy to keep those cells full and your profits up. Privatize your prison today.
Another problem that stemmed from this outsourcing was the introduction of privately owned prisons. These prisons are owned by private corporations, so they make a profit from the prisoners they hold. The more prisoners they have, the more money these corporations make. In order to increase the number of prisoners, more people will be sent to prison for petty crimes. This results in more repeat offenders and an increase in crime as a whole. Taxpayers will have to pay more money, which will not benefit these prisoners, but rather the private corporations that own these prisons.
The first and most apparent result has been the call centers. They employ more than 245,000 workers. For most of those workers, the first step is something called accent neutralization.
Right, class, I want you to take out your books.
Shara Huzay is a longtime teacher at 24/7.
Remember the first day I told you that the Americans flap the t sound? You know, it sounds like an almost d sound, and not keep it crisp and clear like the British. So I would not say Betsy bought a bit of better butter or insert a quarter in a meter, but they would say insert a quarter in a meter, or Betty bought a bit.
Indian call centers is leading to the decline of their culture. As the video shows, these people have to abandon their natural accent and way of speaking in favor of a more Americanized accent. As a result of this, the Indian culture will become more westernized as the call center workers are adopting American traditions and language. This also shows discrimination towards the Indian people because they believe that if an American calls in for tech support and hears an Indian accent, they will refuse service, which will cause the call centers to lose business.
In a video documenting the effect of outsourcing on third world countries, an Indian employee gives his perspective on the future to come.
Of some American. I wondered if these up-and-coming Indians have any sympathy at all for the plight of American workers.
Raj, what do you make of the noise coming out of the United States now about outsourcing? Do you find that odd, understandable?
It is very understandable for a population which is waking up to what I think is the real world, because the world has changed around you, and there is no such thing as barriers to be built that is going to make sense in the long run.
So what is your message? Fasten your seatbelts? You ain't seen nothing yet, America?
My message is that what's happening now is just the tip of the iceberg.
Whoa.
And get used to it. There's a fundamental shift that is happening in the way people are going to do business and the way people are going to source talents that they need. it's just going to be one global market, and ultimately it's going to benefit everybody.
The creation of outsourcing has led people who are benefiting from it in third world countries put themselves on a pedestal or feel better in comparison to their American counterparts. This can be seen as a downside because it leads hundreds of Americans losing their jobs and third world inhabitants with the mindset of superiority.
At that moment, we were tailed by factory security, the Preman, or the local mafia. The local mafia certainly works in conjunction with these factory bosses. The factory bosses are, some of them are just brutal, ruthless, hired muscle to keep workers in line. And we met with one worker, Giulianto. He told us because he was union organized and he was trying to form an independent union.
He was threatened at gunpoint. He had his house ransacked. He was given death threats and he had to flee back to his home village because, in fear of his life. This is literally a life and death issue. And this happens at all the factories.
Every worker that we talk to, there's this struggled with this fear, this culture of fear that just permeates the air. That, yeah, they want to tell you the truth and try and fight for their rights, but they also want their kids to have a father or a mother. They're dealing every day with the threat of losing their lives for doing this kind of work. I mean, they show tremendous courage in light of that.
Corporations such as Nike are working with the local mafia to enforce their dictatorship-like rule. The people are constantly in fear of losing their lives. If they try to demand better wages or shorter hours, they could be killed. These companies are taking away all the basic rights that these people have and forcing them to do inhumane hours of labor. These people sacrifice themselves every day to try to provide a better life for themselves and their families. The majority of sweatshop workers are women and children. These labor practices would never be allowed in the United States. So Nike is doing it in these underdeveloped countries because there are no laws set in place to stop them.
At the end of the day, outsourcing hurts and benefits in different manners. Companies use it to save money and gain capital at the expense of Americans losing jobs. Companies are responsible for the employees they've hired. The companies in these countries are expected to take care of the people rather than mistreat them. The companies are responsible to respect the human rights of these people by giving them minimum wage and health care at least. Third world country people accept these jobs to survive their struggling economies even though their natural rights are being abused and mistreated. Is outsourcing truly worth the mistreatment of others or your own people?